Well, hi there. I'm here today with Jabba, and Jabba is a Savannah Monitor. And we're here to answer the question, is the Savannah Monitor the greatest pet lizard that you could possibly have? And the answer is no. It is just not the best pet lizard you could get. But is it a pretty good pet lizard? Also no. No, really, Savannah Monitor, not a good idea for most people. Is it one of the coolest lizards on planet Earth? You betcha it is. Maybe the coolest one there is. I adore Savannah Monitors. I have loved them always, always, always. They are so rad, so beautiful, so interesting, so active. And honestly, I would love to have one, but I don't. I don't, because it's not even right for me just yet. Jabba belongs to a friend of mine named Rick Voss. He runs a reptile rescue, and so he has taken in Jabba, and unfortunately this is what happens with a lot of Savannah Monitors, the ones that are lucky enough to make it. I honestly wouldn't recommend Savannah Monitors to most reptile keepers, and truth be told, if you are right for a Savannah Monitor, you probably have a lot of experience with big lizards, and you probably don't need me to tell you that a Savannah Monitor is right for you. If you're sort of wondering if you could handle a Savannah Monitor, no, you can't. You will know. If the time is right for you to have a Savannah Monitor, you will know. But I want to talk to you a little bit about why not. Why it's maybe not ideal for most reptile keepers, and why it still might be right for you someday at least. We give the Savannah Monitor a score of 1.8 out of 5. For reasons that will soon become apparent. And that's going to come down, Jabba's an active dude, that is going to come down to our 5 categories. Those 5 categories are handleability, care, hardiness, availability, and upfront costs. So let's start out with handleability, shall we? We give the Savannah Monitor a score of 2 out of 5 for handleability. Ow! Fortunately for me, Jabba just got his nails trimmed, or that would have been a whole lot worse. But he's giving you a good idea why they don't get a score anywhere close to 5 out of 5 for handleability. Honestly, Jabba is about as good as a Savannah Monitor is going to get. He's really excellent. He doesn't try to bite. He doesn't try to get away too hard. He could run and squirm and scratch and tail whip and bite and do just terrible damage with that bite if he wanted to. And he doesn't want to. This is a very, very good Savannah Monitor. And sometimes they can be like this. Sometimes they can be like little puppy dogs. But sometimes they are not like that at all. It's going to depend a lot on how much they've been worked with when they were juveniles and your expertise as a trainer. These are very, very intelligent lizards. You work with them using techniques that you would use for a lot of mammals especially. And so they can become very, very friendly like Jabba here, but that's not built into them. And if they're not friendly, they are going to be something you probably won't be able to handle at all. Kind of like tegus, Savannah Monitors often go through kind of a grumpy adolescent phase, and this is an animal that when it's a grumpy adolescent can hurt you a lot if you're not careful, so you are going to want to be careful about that. Woo! And they don't necessarily come out of it. The key is to work with them while they're very young. If you got a grumpy baby, it'll probably be a grumpy adult if you don't work consistently with it at that size. One thing though that I love about Savannah Monitors when it comes to handling is the fact that they don't drop their tails, which is why every now and then I can use this big tail of his as a bit of a handle and give him a little pull back here, as long as he doesn't mind too much, having to check and make sure he's okay with that. But you can do that without any fear of the tail actually falling off, and you know how much I hate that. And so I love that about monitor lizards. Man, he is powerful though. They can be harness trained, which means that if you work with them a lot, you can put a harness on them, take them on a walk. It's not like they're going to go wherever you want to go. As long as you're happy to go wherever they want to go, you can walk a Savannah Monitor, which is a cool thing. But like I said, only for really expert trainers that have a lot of experience taming intelligent active lizards. They can potentially be the most fun pet lizard on Earth to interact with, or they can be one of the worst. This is a big lizard that can do tremendous damage if it wants to, and sometimes they want to. When it comes to care, we give the Savannah Monitor a 2 out of 5. The reason being that these guys are just honestly much harder, death roll, much harder than their price would imply. You can get a Savannah Monitor very inexpensively, and so a lot of people think this is going to be an easy animal to care for, and it is just not at all. One of the biggest things about them is they're going to need an absolutely enormous enclosure. Colossal. These are very active predators. In the wild, they roam around the African savanna and they just explore all day long. And if they don't have an adequately sized enclosure, they'll get overweight, a bit like Jabba here. You know, fortunately, he's in a good rescue now. He's being well taken care of, but you can see he got a little overweight before he was brought in and turned over to a great home. And if they don't get enough exercise, that's one thing that can happen. And so their enclosure needs to be colossal. I'm talking maybe like a room in your house. And that is a dang big enclosure. They also need an extremely hot basking spot. A really hot basking spot. And the problem with this is you can't do this just with like one big old spotlight, because that actually, they can sit there and get burned by it. And it needs to be far away from them, because they'll go up and start getting close to it, and if they touch it, that can burn them as well. So it needs to be a light that can create a really hot basking spot, but still is a long way away and covers a big area. So usually you have to achieve this by having a whole bunch of basking lamps sort of in the same area of the enclosure, and that is very expensive to buy and very expensive to run, and it's just a pain in the neck. They also need a really deep substrate, something that they can dig in several feet deep. They can dig a big deep burrow, and that substrate has to hold proper humidity, and at the same time it's got to be able to hold its shape so that it doesn't cave in on them when they go digging in there. That's not an easy thing to have unless your enclosure is several feet tall. They're going to need a big water bowl, and because they're digging all day long and exploring all day long, they're going to fill it up with dirt every day, and you're going to have to change that probably daily. Most Savannah Monitors in captivity are also fed a highly improper diet, usually a really high fat diet of things like rodents and canned dog food, and that is just not going to result in a healthy Savannah Monitor. They're very prone to obesity and fatty liver disease. In fact, you'll very rarely find a Savannah Monitor that's going to live a very long time, because they do tend to die from fatty liver disease as a result of being fed too much fat and not getting enough exercise. What they need to be eating, they can eat a little bit of things like the San Diego Zoo diet, which you can look up online. It's a really great recipe for food for monitors and tegus. On top of that, though, Savannah Monitors should be eating a lot of insects. And when we're talking about a lizard this size, and the size of feeder insects that you can get, with the biggest being things like hissing cockroaches, they're eating bucket loads of those things. They need tons and tons and tons of feeder insects. They also need calcium supplements with D3, and they're going to need vitamin supplements. That is intense as far as care goes. They can also eat a few things like hard-boiled eggs, but in general, they're going to be eating mostly meat. It's got to be lean, and a lot of times it's got to be from insects. That's not a cheap lizard to feed. Like most monitors, Savannah Monitors have a really aggressive and fun feeding response, which is just amazing as long as you don't end up on the receiving end of it. Awesome. This guy's like a T-Rex to come plowing into food. He's going to aggressively chase things around his enclosure. Very cool. Awesome to feed. Not totally unique to Savannah Monitors by any means, but monitors in general, awesome feeding response. As you can tell, when it comes time to shed, they will deposit dandruff all over your home. When it comes to hardiness, we give Savannah Monitors a score of 2 out of 5. Generally speaking, if you get an import, ouch, which are the babies that you're going to see almost every time that you see Savannah Monitors for sale. They're imports, and those are going to come in stressed from transport. They're going to come in starved and dehydrated, and a lot of times they're just not going to last very long for you at all. Most adults, if you go out and get an adult and you rescue an adult, I think that's a wonderful thing to do, but most of them have been fed a too high fat diet, and have not had adequate exercise, so they've probably got early onset fatty liver disease, and it's unlikely that they'll last more than a few years for you. If you purchase one that's been captive bred, which is actually very difficult to do for reasons we'll explain here in a moment, but if you do go out and get one that's been captive bred, a lot of these problems go away. And if you give them the expert level care that we've discussed before, they actually can be just fantastic and do really, really well, be as solid as any other monitor, and that's a great thing. But it's hard to find one like that. When it comes to availability, we give the Savannah Monitor a score of 2 out of 5. And you might be thinking that's odd because, you know, you see them actually in pet shops quite a bit, but like I said before, those are all imports. And captive bred is just so much better. In fact, we made a whole video about the reasons, and you can check it out right here. But captive bred is just so much better. And if you get one, well, it's actually really just difficult to do. The reasons that they are so difficult to find captive bred is that monitors in general are difficult and expensive to breed. I mean, if you think about the cost of keeping one of these, let alone a big breeding group of them, it's expensive to keep these animals. It's expensive to feed them. And then you're competing with babies that are being sold for $20 or $30. If you want to get a captive bred baby, you're going to need to find it probably online or go straight to a breeder in order to find one. There are people out there that are producing these captive bred, even some cool morphs of them. Those are not going to be cheap, and it's hard to justify spending that much more on a baby monitor, but believe me, it's worth it. If you have the heart to rescue an adult like this, that is actually fairly easy to find. Most of them that survive being babies are going to end up needing to be rescued eventually because people did not know what they were getting themselves into. But you've got to know it probably won't live more than a few years for you because of the way that it was cared for as a juvenile. Those are some of the huge bummers. But if you did find one and you were ready for it and you gave it the right care and you got it captive bred, it could be fantastic. When it comes to upfront costs, we give the Savannah Monitor a score of 1 out of 5. Even if you decide to buy a cheap import baby and that baby survives for you, the cost of the lizard is not what makes a Savannah Monitor expensive to keep. What makes a Savannah Monitor expensive to keep is the colossal enclosure with really expensive lighting, a lot of electricity to run those lights. And then your food bill. Your food bill for this lizard is going to be through the roof, which is why most people feed them cheap, high-fat diets. You can't do that if you want your Savannah Monitor to live very long. And so, you're going to end up spending a fortune, mostly on feeder insects. Tons and tons and tons of feeder insects. And we've actually got a link down in the description to where you can get feeder insects a bit cheaper, but it's still going to cost you an arm and a leg to feed your Savannah Monitor. So the things you're going to need to buy right up front, you're going to need basically a new room for your house. That's going to be the enclosure. It's going to need to have several feet of substrate in it that can hold its shape and retain moisture for the proper humidity. You're going to need a whole bunch of basking lamps with proper bulbs. You're going to need UVB bulbs. You're going to need a great big water bowl. You're potentially going to need hides, and then you're going to need like $1 million in savings to feed the thing. But it can be purchased. It's just for the rich and famous. And that is why we give the Savannah Monitor an overall score of 1.8 out of 5. You can see why. I don't want you to get the idea that I don't love them because I adore Savannah Monitors. I think they're just spectacular. That head, the look of them, there's nothing else quite like it except for their, bigger cousins, the black throat monitor and white throat monitors. I adore Savannah Monitors, and I'm sorry if I disappointed you by telling you it might not be right for you, but believe me, you would end up disappointed sooner or later. If you want a more reasonable monitor, I have phenomenal news for you. Because Ackie monitors, they exist, and they're wonderful, and they're totally reasonable, and yet they still do all the cool monitor things just in a little monitor package. If what you want is a big lizard, I've got great news! Argentine tegus exist, and they're wonderful, and they're a lot easier than a Savannah Monitor. They're not easy. It's not an easy lizard, but compared to this, a much, much better pet lizard for most people. Again, I'm not saying that the Savannah Monitor isn't right for anybody, but I am saying this is not an impulse buy. This isn't something that you buy because it's cheap. This is something that you research for years, and when you are certain that you're ready for a Savannah Monitor, only then is a Savannah Monitor the right pet for you. I hope this has been helpful. I hope that you've learned a lot. We hope that you've enjoyed seeing this amazing creature. As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon. I thought you were trying to give me a sign.
No.
You kept going.
Why are you staring? I was popping my elbow.
Oh, elbow popping.
You just scared that.
Should have known. 1.8 out of 5. 5. Be adult if you don't work consistently with it at that size. For handleability. Ow! Import. Ouch. Ow. You can check out our video on why. Oh, you can see death roll, claw marks. You can always tell somebody who's got monitor lizards because their forearms look terrible all the time. Whew. You are a handful, dude.